A certified letter from the probate court arrived in my mailbox on a Tuesday. I opened it at the kitchen counter and read that my daughter-in-law Claire had filed a petition to have me declared unable to manage my own affairs. She cited 3 moments of forgetfulness: a missed appointment, a lost key, a birthday I nearly missed. She said I was not safe alone. She asked the court to give her control of my home, my bank accounts, my medical decisions, my life. So I called my doctor's office, picked up the letter from my annual physical 6 weeks earlier, and walked into the courtroom with proof that I was exactly as capable as I had always been. Never let someone else define your capacity. My name is Evelyn. I am 68 years old. I spent 34 years as a registered nurse, the last 18 of those in the cardiac unit at St. Joseph's Hospital. I retired 7 years ago when my husband passed. I have lived in this house alone since then. I manage my own finances, drive myself to the grocery store, and volunteer at the hospital library 2 mornings a week. I forget things sometimes. Not more than I did at 50. But I am 68, so people notice. If you have ever forgotten where you put your keys and felt your stomach drop because you know what people will say: if you have ever missed an appointment and worried that someone is keeping count: you know the fear this story is about. Stay with me. I want to show you how it happened. Claire has been my daughter-in-law for 12 years. She married Michael when he was 27 and she was 28. She is practical, organized, the kind of person who notices when things are out of place. I have always appreciated that about her. She keeps Michael on schedule. She makes sure Lucas my grandson, he is 8 now, has everything he needs. She manages their household well. I did not think she would ever use that competence against me. The court notice arrived on a Tuesday. Certified mail. I signed for it at my front door and carried it to the kitchen counter. I opened it with a butter knife because I could not find the letter opener. That detail matters: because by the time this was over, every small thing I did would be weighed as evidence. I unfolded the papers. The case number. The court seal. The petitioner's name, Claire and Morrison. My daughter-in-law. And the charge, that I was no longer capable of managing my own affairs. I stood at the kitchen counter and read the words 3 separate times before they made sense. The language was legal and formal: inability to manage person or property, but underneath it was simple. Claire had gone to a judge and told them I was not myself anymore. She had done it without telling me, without warning, without a single conversation about her concerns. I sat down at the kitchen table. The letter opener was in the drawer where it always was. I had not needed it because my hands had been shaking too much to open the drawer properly. I sat at the table without moving. The kitchen was the same kitchen I had cooked in for 30 years: the same window above the sink, the same crack in the ceramic tile near the stove, the same clock ticking on the wall: but none of it felt like mine anymore. I looked down at my hands resting on the wood grain and tried to feel like myself. I could not. The person who had opened this letter was someone else, someone whose daughter-in-law had just called her unfit. I do not know how long I stayed there. Long enough for the afternoon light to shift across the floor. Long enough to realize that my life had just split into before and after. There was the woman I had been before I opened that envelope, and there was the woman I was now. I did not know her yet. I thought about what she had told the court. I knew there would be evidence: there always is in these filings. I turned to the affidavit and started reading. That is when I saw my life reduced to 3 moments I barely recognized. If stories like this matter to you: if you have ever worried about what happens when someone decides you are not fit to run your own life: consider subscribing. This channel tells the stories that make you check your own paperwork. I will tell you what happened next. I read the petition 3 times. The first time, my hands went cold. The second time, I started to see the shape of what she had done. The third time, I began to recognize the incidents she had used. She cited 3. The first, a missed medical appointment. According to Claire, I forgot to show up for a scheduled checkup at my cardiologist's office, which proved I could no longer manage my own health care. What she did not include in her sworn statement was that she had called the cardiologist's office herself and rescheduled the appointment without telling me. I showed up on the original date. They had no record of me. I drove home confused and embarrassed. I never knew she had made the call. The second, a lost house key. According to Claire, I had misplaced my front door key so many times that I had started leaving the door unlocked, which proved I was a danger to myself. What she did not include was that I found the lost key in her purse 3 days later, when she visited and set her bag on my kitchen table. I saw it through the open zipper. I did not say anything at the time because I did not want to believe what I was seeing. The third, a forgotten birthday. My sister's 70th. I called her a day late. According to Claire, this proved I was losing track of time and family relationships. What she did not include was that I had been by myself for 4 days straight, the house had been quiet, and I simply lost track of the date on the calendar. It was the first birthday I had missed in 40 years. But in Claire's version, it was the beginning of a pattern. I sat at my kitchen table with the petition spread out in front of me. 3 incidents. 3 half-truths. 3 moments that any person over 60 could have experienced, twisted into evidence that I could not manage my own life. If she had sat down with me if she had told me she was worried, if she had asked me to see a doctor I would have listened. I might have been hurt. But I would have listened. She did not do that. She went to a courthouse. She asked the court to give her control of my home, my bank accounts, my medical decisions. She asked them to decide that I was no longer the person who had raised a son, worked 34 years as a nurse, buried a husband, and kept a house standing alone for 7 years. I called Dr. Patel's office that afternoon. I had been seeing Dr. Patel for 12 years, ever since my husband was diagnosed. She knows my history. She knows my baseline. We do not waste time with each other. I spoke to her receptionist, a woman named Darlene who has been there longer than Dr. Patel. I told Darlene what had happened. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Hold on. I have your file right here." She came back 5 minutes later. "You had your annual physical 6 weeks ago," she said. April 14th. "You remember that appointment?" I remembered. It was a standard physical. Blood work, blood pressure, the usual questions about diet and exercise. I had been going every year since my husband died. Dr. Patel did a cognitive screening, Darlene said. She does it for all patients over 65. It is part of the standard workup. I did not remember the screening. That is how good it was I did not even know I had been tested. Dr. Patel had asked me a series of questions while she took my blood pressure. What year is it? Who is the current president? Draw a clock face. Remember these 3 words and repeat them back in 5 minutes. I had answered without thinking. I had no idea she was scoring my responses. What did it show? I asked. Normal for your age, Darlene said. No concerns. You scored well within range on memory, attention, executive function. Dr. Patel signed a letter confirming full capacity. It is in your file. I asked her to read me the letter. She did. I wrote down the key phrase on the back of an envelope. Patient lives independently, manages her own finances, drives without restriction, and demonstrates intact cognitive function appropriate for her age. The letter was written 6 weeks before Claire filed her petition. Dr. Patel had evaluated me, found nothing wrong, and documented it all before any of this started. Before Claire decided I was not fit. Before she walked into a courthouse. The proof was already in a manila envelope in a filing cabinet at an internal medicine practice on the north side of Milwaukee. I just did not know I would need to ask for it. That is the thing about being a nurse for 34 years. You learn that the medical record is the truth that outlasts every story people tell about you. You learn to keep your paperwork current because you have seen what happens to people whose records are incomplete. I did not know I was preparing to defend myself. I was just doing what I had always done. I drove to Dr. Patel's office the next morning. Darlene handed me a manila envelope. Inside was the original letter, signed by Dr. Patel, on hospital letterhead. I read it standing at the reception desk. Then I read it again in my car. Then I drove home and placed it on my kitchen table next to the court petition. 2 pieces of paper. One said I was incompetent. The other said I was fine. One had been written by my daughter-in-law. The other had been written by my doctor of 12 years, based on an examination that happened before anyone filed anything. Here is where I stopped being the person things happen to and became the person who acts. I called an attorney. A woman named Ann Hollis who specializes in elder law. I found her through the State Bar Association website. Her office was 30 minutes away, in a building near the courthouse. I drove there on a Thursday morning. I brought both papers with me. Ann Hollis was in her 50s, sharp, no nonsense. She read the petition first, then Dr. Patel's letter. She set them both down on her desk and looked at me. Most people who receive a guardianship petition are genuinely incapacitated, she said. That is why the system exists to protect people who cannot protect themselves. But in your case, the petitioner is using the system for something else. What is that called? I asked. Abuse, she said. She explained the process. Claire would have to prove by clear and convincing evidence that I was unable to manage my person or my property. The doctor's letter would be strong evidence to the contrary. But the judge would still hear Claire's testimony. I would have to appear. How often do these petitions get granted? I asked. More often than they should, she said. Because the people they are filed against are usually too confused to fight. You are not confused. That is your advantage. She took the case. She filed a response. I signed the paperwork. That evening, I called Michael. It was the first time we had spoken since the petition arrived. I had been waiting for him to call me. He had not. Did you know about this? I asked. He was quiet for too long. Mom. She was just worried about you. I closed my eyes. Michael. She filed a petition to have me declared legally incompetent. That means a judge decides whether I am allowed to make my own decisions. Did you know? She said it was temporary. She said you would just need someone to help with the paperwork. Did you read the petition? He did not answer. Michael. Did you read what she filed? She put it in front of me, Mom. I trusted her. I wanted to be angry. But I have been a mother for 40 years, and I know what that kind of trust looks like. It looks like a man who loves his wife and does not want to believe she is capable of this. It looks like someone who signed something because he was told it was fine. She said you forgot your doctor's appointment, he said. She said you lost your key. She said you missed Aunt Diane's birthday. She rescheduled my appointment without telling me. She took my key. And I missed one birthday in 40 years, Michael. One. He did not have an answer. I told him I loved him and hung up. The 2 weeks before the hearing were the longest of my life. I did not hear from Claire. I did not hear from Michael. The phone rang only twice a euro, once from Ann Hollis confirming the hearing time, once from Darlene at Dr. Patel's office asking if I had picked up the letter. The house was quiet in a way it had never been quiet before. Not peaceful. Waiting. One evening I picked up the phone. I had Claire's number memorized, years of coordinating dinners, school pickups, holiday plans, and my finger hovered over the keypad. I wanted to hear her voice. I wanted her to tell me it was all a mistake, that someone else had filed the paperwork, that she would never do this to me. I spent most of those 2 weeks at my kitchen table with the 2 pieces of paper, reading them like scripture. I thought about my husband. He had been gone 7 years now. He was a quiet man, patient, the kind of person who let things pass rather than make a scene. But he would not have let this pass. He would have driven me to the courthouse himself, sat in the front row, and stared at Claire until she looked away. I thought about the patients I had cared for in the cardiac unit. The ones whose families stood by them through surgery, through recovery, through the slow work of getting better. And the ones whose families visited once, signed the paperwork, and disappeared. I had seen both. I knew which one I was now. I went to the grocery store during those 2 weeks. I went to the library. I drove myself to both places. I wanted someone to see me doing normal things. I wanted to prove to myself that I was still the same person I had always been. But every time I came home, the cream-colored envelope was still on my kitchen table, and I had to remind myself that I had not imagined it. I kept busy. I cleaned the kitchen cabinets. I organized the garage. I did all the small tasks I had been putting off, as if proving to myself that I could still manage a household. Every evening, I opened the nightstand drawer and read Dr. Patel's letter one more time. Not because I doubted it. Because I needed to see the words in my own handwriting, the key phrases I had copied down on the back of that envelope. Intact cognitive function. Manages independently. No concerns. I had written them 6 weeks before I knew I would need them. That is the nurse in me. You chart everything because you never know what will matter later. I had spent 34 years teaching patients to keep their records straight. Now I was taking my own advice. 3 days before the hearing, Michael called. I am coming to the hearing, he said. To testify against me? To be there. A pause. I do not know what I am going to do, Mom. I just know I cannot stay home. I told him I was glad. Pay attention to this part. This is where the whole thing either works or does not. The hearing was on a Monday morning. I wore a navy blue dress, the same one I wore to my husband's funeral. Not because I was mourning because I wanted to look like someone who was in control of her life. And Hollis met me in the hallway outside the courtroom. She held a copy of Dr. Patel's letter and a copy of Claire's petition. Let me do the talking, she said. Unless the judge asks you a direct question. Claire arrived 10 minutes later. She was wearing a gray suit. She looked professional. She looked like someone who belonged in a courtroom. She did not look at me. Michael was behind her. He caught my eye for half a second, then looked down. The judge was a woman in her 60s. She had gray hair pulled back and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She looked like she had been doing this long enough to know when something was wrong. Claire's attorney presented her case. He outlined the 3 incidents. The missed appointment. The lost key. The forgotten birthday. He spoke as if these 3 things added up to a life that had come apart. Then Ann Hollis stood up. She handed the judge a copy of Dr. Patel's letter. She explained that Evelyn had undergone a comprehensive annual physical and cognitive screening 6 weeks before the petition was filed. She read the key findings aloud: intact cognitive function, manages independently, no concerns. Then she asked the judge to note that Claire had not contacted me before filing. She had not spoken to my doctor. She had not requested a medical evaluation. She had gone straight to the courthouse. The judge read the doctor's letter in silence. Then she looked at Claire. "Why did you not talk to your mother-in-law before filing this petition?" Claire shifted in her seat. I was concerned that she would not understand the conversation. Based on what? I already mentioned the 3 incidents, Your Honor. The judge looked down at the affidavit. Then at Dr. Patel's letter. Then back at Claire. The respondent underwent a cognitive screening 6 weeks before you filed this petition. The screening showed no concerns. Did you request a copy of that evaluation before filing? No, Your Honor. I did not know it existed. You did not ask. I did not think to ask. The judge removed her reading glasses. She set them down on the bench. Claire's attorney stood. Your Honor, we would note that the medical evaluation was initiated by the respondent, not the court. The petitioner has legitimate concerns based on euro. The evaluation was a standard annual physical, the judge said. Not a response to litigation. And the respondent was not even aware she had undergone a cognitive screening. That is the opposite of evidence assembled for a court case. Claire's attorney sat down. The judge looked at Claire. If you had genuine concerns about your mother-in-law's capacity, you could have accompanied her to a doctor's appointment. You could have requested a geriatric evaluation. You could have spoken to her directly. You did none of those things. Instead, you filed a petition that would have transferred control of her home, her finances, and her medical decisions to euro without her knowledge. She paused. This court exists to protect people who cannot protect themselves. But it is not a tool for resolving family disputes without evidence. The petitioner has presented 3 incidents that do not rise to the level of clear and convincing evidence of incapacity euro, especially in light of a recent medical evaluation that directly contradicts the claim. The petition is dismissed with prejudice. She said, with prejudice. That means Claire cannot file again based on the same evidence. Claire's face did not change. She sat very still. Her attorney leaned over and whispered something. She nodded once. I did not celebrate. I did not cry. I sat there and listened to the judge close my file. In the hallway afterward, Claire walked past me. She did not say anything. She did not look at me. She walked to the elevator and pressed the button and stood there with her back to me like I was a stranger who had wandered into her building. Michael came out last. He stood in front of me with his hands in his pockets. Mom. I am sorry. I know. Did you really have the letter before she filed? I took the letter out of my bag and handed it to him. The physical was 6 weeks before she filed. Dr. Patel signed this before any of this started. I did not know I would need it. I just had it. He read the letter. Then he handed it back. She said you were getting worse. She was wrong. He nodded. He hugged me. It was brief, but it was real. He held me the way he used to when he was a boy euro, arms wrapped tight, face pressed into my shoulder. I remembered teaching him to ride a bike, making him soup when he was sick, sitting beside his bed after he broke his arm. He still fit in my arms. But I knew, standing in that hallway, that some hugs cannot take you back to before. They are just 2 people holding on to what is left. He walked to the elevator and joined Claire. She did not look at him either. The doors closed. The drive home was quiet. I sat in the passenger seat while Hollis drove me back to my house. I had offered to drive myself, but she said I should not drive after a hearing. I did not argue. I looked out the window at the streets I had driven for 40 years. The same drugstore. The same gas station. The same turn onto my street. Everything looked the same. But I was not the same. I had been accused, in a court of law, of being unable to manage my own life. I had proven otherwise. But the accusation existed. It would always exist. Somewhere in a file, in a database, in Claire's memory, there is a record that someone thought I was not capable. That is a thing you cannot unknow. That was 6 months ago. Claire and I have not spoken since. She does not come to family dinners. She sends Lucas to me through Michael A. He drops him off on Sundays, picks him up at 4. We do not talk about the hearing. We do not talk about Claire. Last Sunday, Lucas asked me if Grandma was sick. I told him I was not sick. He said his mom said I had been forgetting things. I told him everyone forgets things sometimes. I asked if he ever forgot his homework. He laughed and said yes. I said it was the same with grown-ups. He seemed satisfied with that. We made chocolate chip cookies. He ate 3 before Michael came to pick him up. I do not know what Claire tells him. I do not know if she will keep bringing him here. But I know that for one Sunday afternoon, he sat at my kitchen table and I taught him how to measure flour, and neither of us was thinking about the courthouse. Michael calls once a week now. We talk about his job, Lucas's soccer games, the weather. We do not talk about what happened. I think he is waiting for me to bring it up. I think I am waiting for him to say something first. We are both still waiting. I keep Dr. Patel's letter in my nightstand drawer. Not because I need it for anything the case is closed. I keep it because it reminds me that the truth does not need to be assembled after the accusation. Sometimes it is already there, written and signed and filed away, waiting for the moment someone decides to challenge your life. I still have the court notice too. I keep them together. The accusation and the proof. They are 2 pieces of paper that tell the same story from opposite sides. I got a postcard from Dr. Patel's office last week. It said I was due for my annual physical. I called Darlene and made the appointment. I marked it on my calendar in blue ink my calendar, my kitchen, my handwriting. I will go, and Dr. Patel will run the same tests, and I will leave with the results in an envelope if I want them. I do not know if I will need them. I hope I will not. But I have been a nurse long enough to know that hoping is not the same as preparing. I do not go to bed angry. I do not wake up afraid. I live in my house. I pay my bills. I drive myself to the grocery store. I volunteer at the hospital library on Tuesdays and Thursdays. My life is my own. Some days I forget where I put my keys. I find them. I always find them. And when I do, I remind myself that forgetting is not failing. Forgetting is being human. The difference is that now I know the difference between a lost key and a lost life. And I will never let anyone confuse the two again. And if anyone ever tries to take it again, I will have the paperwork. But the paperwork protected my independence. It could not restore my trust. That is the part nobody warns you about that even after you win, something stays broken. I am learning to live with it. Some days are easier than others. If you have ever worried about what happens when a family member decides you are not fit to run your own life, I want you to do one thing. Just one. Make an appointment with your doctor. Not next month. This week. Get a checkup. Ask about a cognitive screening. And keep the results somewhere you can find them. Not because you expect the worst. Because the best time to prepare for a fight is before you know you are in one. I will keep my appointment next week. I will let Dr. Patel run her tests. I will answer her questions about the date and the president and the clock face. And I will put the results in my nightstand drawer, next to the letter that already lives there. Because you never know when someone you love will decide you are no longer capable of taking care of yourself. And the only thing worse than being accused is being unprepared. I am prepared.